So the following is just meant to be a podcast. I don't have most of the facts are off the top of my head and are probably like just more or less allegations. But the first part of this is about Tucker Carlson and Fox firing him. This was one of the very few journalists that spoke the real truth, the raw truth. And from here on out, like Coach Red Pill and Gonzalo Lira, says it's nothing but propaganda. But the American media has been nothing but propaganda since I think about the 60s. And I've mentioned this before. It's Operation Mockingjay. You can Google it right now. In fact, I'll give you time to do so. And you can come back to this or you can check it out later. So that's the homework for this video. Look up Operation Mockingjay. But I'll sum it up for you. If you're too lazy or you don't want to be troubled. So basically, I think it was the 60s and the 70s. The CIA started taking bags of cash. And I think it was sooner than that. I think it even happened during Roswell in the 50s. So they would take bags of cash to journalists, news agencies, radio stations, and they would basically say, cover this, don't cover this. And essentially, it grew into black budget money that goes to the media to cover and bury stories that serves the national interest. Now, the funny, ironic thing about this here in the West, they always point at RT TV, and saying it's Russian state-sponsored TV and news, but we're no different. The only difference is our corruption of our media is buried more. It's more subtle. It's more clandestine. And there's a certain three-letter agency, CIA, and basically our media is no different than any other state-sponsored horseshit, whether it's like China, Russia, and basically the main point, in my opinion, of this video is I think what we're seeing in the West and within the United States is our collapse. Now, if you know, in the 80s and 90s, Russia, the USSR collapsed and it fell hard. And now I think it's the West's turn to experience that. It's our turn after so many times, after so many years and decades later. I think it's our time to eat crow, or pardon the expression, to eat shit. We're going downhill on a bike and the wheels are coming off, and we're gonna face plant. So there's going to be more terminology here for you. The BRICS nation: Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, and there's an S somewhere in there, but BRICS. India, Russia, China. Anyways, there's these nations. I think even India and its neighbor, um, India and another country are trading their own currency now instead of the US dollar. And the BRICS nations are also investing heavily in gold. So basically, what this means is the world is divorcing itself from the US dollar. And the Saudi Arabia is also doing so. They want to trade their oil with the Chinese yuan. So basically, what happens and is happening is the United States and the West is losing its control on the world economically. And when that happens, some shit's gonna hit the fan, like the USSR did. When the USSR collapsed, countries fell into disorder, chaos. And what do we have now? We have Ukraine. Um, you have all these ex Russia states. I think Belarus now is reopening their missile silos. So, what was the point of Russia breaking up in the first place if the West in the 80s said, yeah, we defeated communism and those damn dirty rats? Nothing's really changed. So, the more things change, the more things stay the same. There's also a Russian proverb that goes, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, which is a phrase that goes back to the Russian Revolution with the czarists and communists. Because the czarists, I mean, although in my humble opinion, uh, were better than communists. Anything's better than communists. Communism in my mind, because communism is a lie. where at least, with Tsarism, there's like a belief in a higher order of God and king and God and country. Um, but where was I going with this? Uh, oh, yeah, old boss, same as the new boss. With communism, there wasn't a great people's liberation. It was just more purge trials, executions, and treason against their own people. And I think the U.S., the West, the fall of the U.S. May not be so dramatic, but it's going to be bad. I think, and others theorize that there could be a giant economic bed shitting. And basically, if you have any common sense, if you're like above lukewarm IQ person, you should at least if you're in the United States and other places, you should be stocking up on foodstuffs, gold, silver, ammunition, and investing in things that could save your family. Live meager today so you can live better tomorrow, kind of thing. I'm not going like saying go full prepper, but that wouldn't hurt either. But I think what we're seeing is the collapse of the Western powers. Ukraine, Bakhmut, I've been like following that. They've lost over 85%. They're losing more, and it's not going too well for the Ukes. The Russians just have more manpower, more arms, and more shit to throw at them. And I think Zelensky could possibly be on his way out. So, but if the U.S. does fall and economic hard times do happen, they're going to be looking for a World War III or something to pull the United States out of its current economic situation. But the problem is, how many made in America products have you seen recently that wasn't like absolutely pointless? China has our factories. China makes all of our shit. So I guess there could be a resurgence of an industrialized America, and I mean that in the economic sense, and there could be. I'm not a glass half empty kind of person. I like to believe that America won't go out like a wet fart, but it's almost beginning to look that way. And these next elections in 2024 will judge to see what the next 4 years will be like. But before that happens, again, as a lukewarm, above IQ person, you should be preparing. Because just in case, I'm not being here being like this prophet predicting doom and the collapse of the United States. I'm just saying it looks pretty shaky to me. And if you compare it again to the collapse of the Soviet Union and the USSR, it's pretty spooky. We're going down the same things, we're having disarray at home, domestically, our powers waning internationally. Our politicians and leaders only care for themselves. And you can't honestly tell me that you can look at President Joe Biden and say that that's a symbol of a stable country. The guy shits his pants. Shits his pants. And eats ice cream. What's he concerned about? Oh, inane, stupid, woke, political shit. Not about, the very fate of the West and Europe being at risk. No, he's concerned about inane political shit, or that's so the puppets behind him are doing. Um, so yeah, again, if you're above like lukewarm intelligence, prepare just in case, because I don't know. It seems if America doesn't correct course, well, it may be too late anyway. Um, but who knows? Maybe God will send us send us one of two things: a liberator or a conqueror. And whether that comes out from overseas or from within, who really knows at this point? It's some pretty spooky times. Um, but regardless, the Zelensky regime, it's not looking too good. They've been trying these offensive and they're just not working. Um, because you can't force a populace to fight an unjust war, and that goes for both sides, Ukrainian and Russian. But the Russians have the iron will. Let's talk about Russians for a minute during World War II. This is the Battle of Stalingrad, just as an example. The Germans ran out of ammunition, shooting Russians. Yeah, that's what happened. They ran out of ammunition, shooting people. Russians threw so many infantry and just so much shit at the Germans that it clogged up the gears of their war machine. It physically choked the Germans on their own blood. So if we go to fast forward to current times, Russia still has that resolve. Russia still has that will. Ukraine is a puppet state at best. Zelensky is lining his own pockets with foreign money, American money, taxpayer money, and I. And although he puts cuts a good figure, like he cares about his people in Ukraine, um, couldn't trust Vladimir Zelensky as far as I could throw him. And who knows if this shit is all orchestrated anyway to throw the world into disorder and chaos? That could be too. Um, but yeah, it's just there's weird shit going on, and Tucker Carlson being fired is like a tragedy. But we all know the American media is controlled by a three-letter agency. Anyway, they dictate what's covered and what's not. And if you guys haven't been watching the news, have you guys realized? Have you guys noticed? Of course, the racial shit they keep bringing up. I mean, there was some scholar shot at someone's front door for ringing the wrong doorbell. There was another white family that was shot by a black person, and that just like they want to stir up some racial crap. So basically, what we're seeing is a destabilization domestically, internationally, and I don't know if the BRICS nations are behind it. I don't really. That's a fun conspiracy shit for you. Like, who's really behind all this chaos in the world, and what for, and what gain? You know, the military industrial complex hasn't had a giant war in a while, so their profits are kind of, they haven't really made too much. Afghanistan kind of came to a bad close for them. Um, so who's to say? I mean, oh, we can all say, but here on YouTube, we can't get too into it because, part of the same operatic MSM media, like world elite crap going on here. So yeah, pretty interesting, spooky, scary times we're living in, and um, I can't honestly say that I see the United States existing or surviving another Biden term. Even if we do get a different party in control next, who's to say that even their efforts won't be in vain? Because I think the die is already cast. I think this die was cast way back when Nixon took our currency off the gold standard. And I think that started when he opened up trade with China and started shipping, and then America started shipping cheap labor over to China and factories and shit. So I think the end started back then, and then of course Clinton didn't help, and the following presidents didn't help either. So the blame is at both parties' feet. And until Americans can kind of break free of the mental prison of right or left, until we really start analyzing what's going on, I think that's the only time when we liberate ourselves, when we can fix our country. Um, but it could be too late for that. I guess I think people are too far gone. Spiritually, mentally, philosophically. But who knows? Maybe the future will surprise us all. Maybe this will just be one bump in the road. Or not. Who knows? Um, Maybe we'll look at this. Oh, you remember that time where it was spooky and we almost went to World War III? Ooh, wasn't that scary? That's my optimal way of thinking. Or maybe we'll be running from rubble pile to rubble pile. eating rats. Mmm. Anyways, but yeah, if you can take away fucking my Porky Pig the reenactment there. But yeah, if there's one thing you can take away, prepare, start getting knowledge on how to plant foods, crops, invest gold, silver, guns, ammo, and things for your own survival and your own family's survival. Because at the end of the day, that's all what it boils down to: family and friends, and Godspeed.